Thank you so much for Just Michigan Life Domains webinar series. We're so pleased to have you all back with us today, and we look forward to our topic of discussion. As many of you know, my name is Maddie Day, and I am the Director of Outreach and Training with the Center for Fostering Success at Western Michigan University, and I lead the Fostering Success Michigan statewide initiative. A few housekeeping things before we get started. All attendees will be in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. If you have questions, you can ask questions using the chat or questions feature in your sidebar. If you have technical difficulties, you can contact the Citrix team at the number that you see on your screen. And of course, the recording will be available following the webinar in our resource library on the Fostering Success Michigan website. I'd like to say a special thank you to our funders, the Kresge Foundation, the Havermill Foundation, and Western Michigan University for their continued support of Fostering Success Michigan and our statewide work to increase access and success in post-secondary education and professional careers for students with experience in foster care. Now I'd like to say a special welcome to our guest, Dr. John DeGarmo. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. John. As many of you may have heard, Dr. John is an international foster care expert. He's joined us a couple times before, I believe, on webinars. And as many of you probably have read in information about the webinar, Dr. John is a well-published author, speaker, trainer, and his features in the Huffington Post are kind of some of my favorite regular reads on issues related to foster care. So thank you, Dr. John, for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. As a native of Michigan, right around that area, this is as close as I've been to my hometown, so this is quite nice. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, yes, and I believe you're from the Battle Creek area, right?
That's right, but I spent many a time in Kalamazoo and watched many a Broncos game.
Oh, awesome. Well, go Broncos. Thanks for joining us.
Go Broncos.
So this webinar is, one of our part of our series for the Life Domains webinar series, and this is really on holistic success for youth with experience in foster care. And what we wanted to do is provide a webinar that kind of takes a different look than some of our webinars have throughout this year. As usual, this webinar is great for youth, students, professionals, and supportive adults. Our goal is to build awareness around kind of the unique challenges that students with experience in foster care face as they move to and through the education pipeline. We want to provide some suggestions and resources for those who support students with experience in foster care. And particularly today, we're really interested in the type of support for our supportive adults. We also want to provide an understanding of ways to support students holistically as they're in that education journey and making their way to college. The 7 Life Domains framework is a framework that the Center for Fostering Success has adapted. This comes from the Casey Family Program's It's My Life framework. This is a research-based framework that the Center for Fostering Success here at Western Michigan University has adapted to have education at the center. You'll see all of the 7 Life Domains represented, and in this orientation, we put education at the center because we are an education-focused agency and organization. The 7 Life Domains offer a way to organize, understand, and develop a response to the lived experience of young people in foster care and with experience in foster care. The 7 Life Domains, as we approach it within Fostering Success Michigan, offers a way for us to broaden the network of support that we really believe is essential to holistic success for our students with experience in foster care. So while we may have the education at the center, as that's our focus from Fostering Success Michigan, we have other partners, perhaps those in Michigan Works, that have finances and employment at the center. And if you are somebody who is involved in housing, you may have housing at the center. And with this orientation, it becomes very clear that any of these life domains can be at the center, but they are all interconnected to each other and to the success in each domain. One of the things that we wanted to pause on is really to talk about who is in the FSM network. And so you may hear us talk about the Fostering Success Michigan Network and maybe wondering, well, who is that? And am I part of that? And do I get a badge or something for joining? So the Fostering Success Michigan Network is really all of our professionals, students, and supportive adults who are engaged in the education to career pipeline in Michigan for students with experience in foster care. And so the way that we look at this is if you are a professional or a supportive adult who provides resources or support to students in any of these 7 life domains, you are part of the Fostering Success Michigan Network. And we really want to engage you in helping you to provide the resources and the support that you have most effectively to students with experience in foster care. We really talk a lot about how the 7 life domains framework helps to align the activities of participants in the FSM network in a mutually reinforcing domain or way. So we talk to our partners and ask them not to do more, not to work in multiple domains, but really to stay in the domain that they are best at, that they are an expert at, and then find partnerships and collaborations in other domains so that when a student has a question, let's say if you're somebody who's in the education domain and a student has a question about physical or mental health, you have a contact, you have a resource or support person for the student in that domain. So that's really how we see orienting the life domains, and we really hope that this provides kind of a helpful view for our FSM network. One thing I want to say in particular is this question around who is a supportive adult often, is asked, and we're going to, in a minute, take an opportunity to hear from Dr. John. But we do want to just call out a few groups that we think are really essential here in Michigan. Those are our mentors, our caregivers, and our CASA providers. Each of these groups are groups of really supportive adults who are so essential to the success of our students with experience in foster care in the education pipeline. I'm sure I'm missing many others, but just to name those 3 and make sure that that it's clear and understood that we're not just talking about those who may be in a formal professional role with a student. And so with that, I am going to ask Dr. John to join us again and start with you as the expert, Dr. John, and ask, who do you consider a supportive adult?
Oh, that's a great question. I've had the blessing of having over 50 children come through my home as foster, adoptive, or even homeless youth the past 15 years, and I've had as many as 11 kids in my house at the same time. And I quit. Yeah, right. 7 in diapers last year. And I quickly realized that I could not do it by myself. No way in the world could I do it by myself. My wife and I depended upon people to help us, those supportive adults, if you will. And so many of the children who come through my home have been able to form very, very important relationships with the adults in our community. Some of those relationships, some of those supportive adults, those adults who, when I speak across the country, I often note to people that not everybody can be a foster parent, but everybody can help and everybody can support a child in foster care in some fashion, in some way. So the children who've come through my home have been blessed to have so many people who want to support them. Many times the teachers, a child in school will find that they're going to spend more time in a school setting, more hours per day, weekday, Monday through Friday, in a school setting than they will in my house, than they will in a foster care home. And so if there's a teacher out there who could develop a relationship with a foster child, that goes a long way, a long way. So teachers are fantastic supportive adults. You mentioned CASAs. Oh my goodness, I love CASA workers.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do enough without them. Unfortunately, we've not had many CASA volunteers in our area, but each time that we do, I have found the support not only for the child of immense help, but also for me. Oh my goodness, so much for me. Members of our church have volunteered on numerous occasions to help children in foster care. Just this past Christmas, we had an 18-year-old teen placed into our home and we have 9 children in our house right now, and my wife and I have only so many hours in the day. Well, there was a family in a church who said, "Hey, we want to help. We want to be this teenager's Santa Claus, so to speak." So they took him shopping. They bought him clothes. They bought him book bags. They bought him shoes. So not only did the child benefit from having somebody say, "Hey, I'll help out with material goods," they spent time with that child. They took him out to dinner. They listened to his questions and concerns. They guided him. They offered support. That is invaluable. You mentioned mentors as well, a mentor program, big brothers, big sisters. There may be businesses out there who say, you know what, I can't be a foster parent, but I would love to have a child in foster care, youth in foster care, come and learn important work skills. We have another 18-year-old in the house. We have two 18-year-olds in our house right now that are from foster care, and one of them is doing an apprenticeship right now in a cleaning shop, and he's learning incredible skills. So those are just a few of the supportive adults out there. There are so many more, but it goes well beyond the foster parent and the caseworker. The community come around and develop really some very, very valuable and important relationships. And these kids need to have that. Oh my goodness, they need to have those relationships because they need to learn that there are other people out there who care for them, that these children matter.
Yeah, and so what I love that, as you talk and you kind of talk about sort of this broader community of support, I think it's so essential that people understand, and like you said at the very beginning, that, you may not be able to be a foster parent, but you have a role in supporting young people who experience foster care, and that it's beyond sort of maybe the confines of what we think of as a traditional maybe child welfare support system that includes, caseworkers, counselors, therapists, and caregivers, that really there's a broader community of, from the faith community, mentors, CASAs, and then teachers. So I have a thought about the next question just from kind of what you said, but I'm curious how you would maybe make the separation or define how supportive adults are different from professionals.
Well, before we do that, I want to add one more. We have
Yeah.
our town's sheriff. He has such a heart for kids, and he volunteers to spend time with our kids from foster care in his own time, and it's been amazing. So these children are able to see that the law enforcement, the police officers, they care, they have hearts, they're good guys. So that's a win-win for both sides right there. It's really exciting to see.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's a really special thing.
Yeah, sure, sure. But so yeah, supportive adults do absolutely different from professionals. A child in foster care may see the professional as just that, as the professional. They are assigned a caseworker. And that caseworker, and I've had some fantastic caseworkers that I've worked with, whose hearts are very much in the right place, who are definitely doing it because they have a love for children. That's wonderful. But for the children, though, they may see it as, you know what, this person's assigned to me, it's their job. So the difference here could be the fact that these children see somebody stepping up who is not a foster parent, who is not a child welfare worker or caseworker, if you will, and so that child may realize that, you know what, I matter. Somebody cares about me. Somebody's taking time of their personal time to volunteer to spend time with me. Along with that, supportive adults can bring many, many different skills and different resources to the children that the professionals may not offer. As I mentioned earlier, the one who is doing an apprenticeship in a cleaning shop, he's learning important work skills, responsibility, skills like that that he might not learn from his child welfare worker. The members of the faith-based organization may introduce them to different communication skills and different skills in building relationships. So I think that the supportive adults really help the child learn how to develop those important relationship skills, develop relationships, have a sense of worth, and the supportive adults could bring in a great deal of knowledge and resources that may go well beyond what a professional can offer.
Yeah, so when you gave your first answer about, who's considered a supportive adult, the note that I wrote down to myself was quality of the relationship. And I think, you hit it when you said, so many times young people experience people in their life because they're paid to be there, and that unfortunately we can maybe make that a little too evident. We're here because somebody paid to me to be here. But the quality of a supportive adult relationship is really different, and that relationship is really about kind of this mutual exchange of a genuine, desire to get to know and invest in that young person in their life, share that knowledge, and that young person really matters to that supportive adult, matters more than just, that's part of how they get their paycheck. They really matter on a personal level. And so I think it's, I appreciate what you said, and really, really well stated.
Well, thank you. And more importantly, those relationships can last well beyond if the child leaves the foster care system. It could grow into something, grow into something useful and beautiful later on in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably one of the most clear distinctions is, as professionals in many, spaces in our roles, it's really, against sort of our ethical codes or, the boundaries of our role to continue a relationship beyond, when that professional role is assigned. But that supportive adults really can be a lifelong part of this young person, and be such a strength to them kind of ongoing.
Right, right, right. Our own church sends out Christmas cards and birthday cards to many of our former children from foster care who have aged out. They see it as part of their outreach, if you will, part of their ministry to continue that relationship. And so for these children who have aged out and left the system, a Christmas card and a birthday card, it may be the only one they're getting. So again, it's just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you talked a little bit about what a supportive adult can do to help. So I'd love to hear more kind of thoughts in particular, maybe some concrete ways, you've given some, but some things that people that may be listening could think about, or if, like many of our folks that might be listening, are professionals who are seeking to engage more supportive adults in, say, their programs with students, their campus support programs. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what supportive adults can do to help. And with that, one of the values that FSM has is really that these supportive adult relationships and professional relationships should be really based on developing an interdependent relationship to help, youth and young adults grow skills, particularly in the skills of self-advocacy. And some of the things that we talk about as building blocks for building those interdependent relationships are the need to use person-centered language, so person-first language, so saying, a young adult or youth in foster care with experience in foster care, really the need to be genuinely engaged. And again, I think this kind of goes to your comment earlier about not just there because this is your paycheck. And then being dependable, being somebody who a student can count on and count on not just them being there, but that they're going to show up in the same kind of way every time. So kind of with that in mind and in the background, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about how supportive adults can help young people, especially our transition age young people in foster care.
Yeah, great question. Thanks for asking. Well, so many of these children need to learn important work skills and relationship skills. So there can be, well, let's begin. Let's begin with education. These children may need someone to help them with schoolwork, with being a tutor. I taught English and history for many, many years. There's a reason why I did not teach math, because my math skills are pretty poor. But, there may be somebody in my community who says, you know what, your child is struggling with math. I'd love to be their mentor, their tutor, if you will, and teach them math skills and develop relationship and teach them. They'll need those skills going on later in life. There may be someone that says, you know what, I can't be a foster parent, but I can help the child learn how to drive. I can help the child get back and forth to doctor's appointments. I can help the child get back and forth to work. I can help the child learn. I can teach a child new skills, maybe cooking skills or cleaning skills, or as I mentioned earlier, job skills. I love when business owners say, I will hire a youth in foster care so they can learn those important skills, not only of work skills, but of responsibility and dependability. There may be people in the area who say, you know what, I can't be a foster parent, but I would love to help the foster parents in my area and adopt a child at Christmas time or birthdays, or provide brand new suitcases for these children when they do age out of the system so they have something to take all their belongings with. There could be those people who say, you know what, I will help um, with school supplies, or I will help create a college fund for these children if they should go to college. These are just a few of the many, many opportunities that the community, that these supportive adults can help with these children before they leave the system and prepare them for success later on. And not only are they preparing them for success, as we mentioned earlier, they are building important relationships. These youth need to know how um, to relate, to communicate, and to socialize, if you will, social skills. As I mentioned earlier, we have a couple 18-year-olds in our house. One of these 18-year-olds has very, very poor social skills because nobody took time to learn how to socialize with him. So we are at ground level with him on that. These youth need to have somebody to teach them those important skills.
Yeah, um, so I always love talking with you because I always learn new and different things and think about things in a different way, in many ways. And so I love, this list. I was kind of taking notes. I don't know that I got all of them, but tutoring, such a great resource. And then one that really stuck out to me, learning how to drive. That is such a huge issue for our young people in foster care. And as you well know, in Michigan, it's almost essential that you have a driver's license and a car to get anywhere, particularly in the winter.
Right.
And it's a huge thing, to teach a young person how to drive.
Right.
That's a little bit of a scary prospect for me. But, for those who are out there, who are comfortable, getting behind the wheel with a young person, a new driver, what a great opportunity to help build skills, build trust, and build confidence with that young person.
Right, right. I am not an expert at parallel parking, nor am I an expert on the stick shift. And a friend of ours at church said, you know what? You got a 16-year-old boy. He needs to learn how to parallel park, and he needs to learn how to drive a stick shift. So he spent a Saturday afternoon with him. And, how fantastic was that? Not only is he
Yeah,
teaching him those skills, again, the child is learning to socialize more and learn that, you know what? He matters. Someone is taking
great.
time out of their schedule to do that. So it's a
Yeah.
win-win.
Absolutely. Well, and the other one that I loved is providing transportation for young people. I have lots of friends who are parents and they're driving their kids, all over from sports activities to music activities to, play dates and whatever. And that, especially if you have more than one child in your home, that becomes a complicated thing, particularly if you're a working parent. And I know for our foster parents and our caregivers out there, if there was somebody who'd be willing to say, hey, I can take so and so, to their band practice every Thursday, that would be such a huge gift to the foster parent, but it also is another person, like you said, in that young person's life that is showing up for them, and is showing up in, like we've talked about, a genuine and dependable way. And so I think that that's a great kind of maybe small thing, if you have, a couple hours once a week that you could do. The other thing that I think is really huge with all the different pieces that you talk about is the ways that people can support our youth and our young adults are also ways that we can support the caregivers. And one of the challenges that we see are, our caregivers are put under a lot of stress. There's a lot of expectation on them. There's a lot of, requirements and regulations that they have to comply with.
Right.
And, we hear it over and over again, foster parents saying, I had to close my license because I just couldn't do everything that they needed me to do and still be a good parent, and I think if there were others in the community who knew that the need could be as simple as, once a week taking the kids, out to an activity so the caregivers, foster parents could have some time alone, and that's beneficial for the young people, it's beneficial for the foster parent, it's beneficial for the supportive adult. If they knew that that was, a possibility, I think that we would have a lot more success, unfortunately, than we do in retaining our foster parents. So
Right. I want to expand on two things you mentioned there very briefly. You mentioned band. there may be someone in the community who says, you know what, I have a love for music and I would love to sponsor the child in a marching band or a sport and help
Mm-hmm.
pay for those activities. Because many times it comes out of the pocket of the foster parent, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we're financially strapped. Also, you mentioned ways to help. Hey, I remember a member of our community years ago who loves to cook, and they took one of our foster kids once a week and spent a couple hours with them, teaching them how to cook a new meal each time, and that meal was for our family. So it gave my
Mm-hmm.
wife and I a break and
Mm-hmm.
provided
That's great.
and it taught the child a new skill as well. So great opportunity.
Yeah. And I think one last point, and we'll move on to the next question. I think you and I could probably talk all day about this question, but um, I think it's really important for people to understand that this could be supportive adults at any age. So you could have a student in college who says, "Hey, I have a few extra hours once a week. I could help, take a student to do this, or be part of planning some fun activity, or whatever. It doesn't take a lot of money. It can just take time.
Right,
You could have somebody who, like you mentioned earlier, is in their career and maybe open to doing some job coaching, some having an intern, doing some apprenticeship work to help young people learn those really essential skills of how to show up for work, how to find a job, how to be a competitive applicant and employee. And then it can be, older folks who are, in the community and often I think sometimes forgot for the richness of the resource that they offer, and that they, maybe somebody who can come and show up at those soccer games and cheer those young kids on, and
right,
maybe, sit down with somebody and do the tutoring and talk about some of those big life decisions, and that it really could be anybody of any age, of any, financial background, and that it, what we're really talking about is, like we talked about earlier, taking the time to ensure that young people know that they matter.
right.
So thank you kind of for all of your insight with that. I just think it's super helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
So the next question that we have is, from your perspective, what do you see, and this kind of goes back to our life domains framework, what do you see as the most relevant domain for supportive adults to focus on, and why?
Well, that's a great question. I, uh, my doctorate was in. Well, let me step back a bit. When I first became a foster parent, I was teaching English and history and drama in a rural school, and I noticed that many of the youth in my home were going to schools, and they were just sinking in school, behavior issues, academic issues. I then stepped back and realized, you know what? Before I was a foster parent, I didn't know any about that. I didn't. Foster children were not on my radar. There was no training for teachers. There's no training for school officials about the many, many challenges that children in foster care specifically face. So I went back and I thought, okay, this is a very, very important issue. 55% of kids in foster care are going to drop out of school. 65% will end up homeless. 75% will end up in jail. And it's mainly, a lot of it is due to lack of education and a good high school diploma. And there's a reason why so many of them are a year and a half behind academically, at the very, very least. So I went and got my doctorate. I brought together foster parents, I brought together social workers, I brought together teachers and educators, and I asked them, how can we help these children survive and succeed in school? Because as you and I both know, and everybody listening know, in this year, in this day and age, without a high school diploma, it's going to be very, very difficult,
Mm-hmm.
very, very difficult to get any decent job.
Mm-hmm.
Compound that with youth who are aging out of the foster care system, and they may not have support. They may not have a supportive adult. Without a high school diploma, how in the world are they going to survive? That explains why so many end up homeless, and that explains why so many end up in jail. So I believe the most important domain, the most relevant domain for youth who are aging out is that of education. They have to get a high school diploma or a GED in order to make it, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think so I agree with you. Of course, I'm, I this is my life's work, is doing education advocacy for young people with experience in foster care. And I when people ask me how I got into this work, the very kind of nutshell story really is I worked in child welfare for a number of years, particularly in child placement, and there were consistently young kids, well, kids that were, in my opinion, young, but to the system were old, some as young as 8 and 10, that we're just consistently told there's not going to be a permanent placement for you. There's no permanency with a caregiver for you, and that you'll age out of the system. And I kept thinking, well, what can they have that can't be taken away from them? And education was really that piece that was the thing that I felt like above all else, you can't take somebody's high school diploma, that certificate, the GED, and more than that, you can't take associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a technical certificate, a high quality credential. You can't take that away from somebody. And I think you're right that, for our young people that many of whom, they're in foster care, they've experienced the cycle of poverty and abuse and neglect. The ticket out of that cycle is education. And so for all of us engaged, I think promoting that education is really so essential, and not just promoting make it to your 18th birthday, but make it to your 18th birthday with a diploma or a GRE certificate. So I completely agree with you.
Absolutely right.
So our next question is, what domain do you see as the most challenging to address as a supportive adult? And again, there's the 7 life domains. I'll flash back to this screen: finances and employment, housing, physical and mental health, supportive relationships and community connections, cultural and personal identity, life skills, and education. So really, we're really spanning this holistic idea of the world of a young person. So what domains do you see as the most challenging in the role of a supportive adult?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer. I could point at any one of them and give a strong argument.
I agree.
I would state social relationships and community connections, and I would say that for this reason alone. If a child does not know how to have a relationship with people, how to socialize with people, does not have those community connections, there is no way in the world they are going to survive. If they can't walk into a business and know how to apply for a job, if they can't learn how to, in a positive fashion or an appropriate manner, if you will, how to express their emotions in a social setting, if they should become frustrated or upset or traumatized, if they can't do that, they're going to end up in a world of trouble. If they don't know how to make important connections with the community around them, they're not going to survive.
Mm-hmm. I will admit to being surprised that was your answer. I think because in my world so often we hear housing as the domain.
Right.
But when I hear your rationale, it actually makes the most sense.
Well, if they don't know how to have those relationships with people, the housing is not going to work, because how are they going to be able to communicate with the landlord for rent when they're on difficult times? If they're living with somebody and they are having an emotional crisis, how are they going to be able to deal with that if they don't have those social skills? And they could be out in the streets. It could be out in the
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think it demonstrates the interconnectedness of all of these domains, right? And kind of the inherent skills that are sort of under each of these domains. But I hadn't really thought about how critical the social relationships and community connections really are. And I think about that domain. I often think about that domain as how critical it is to our role as professionals, and that we need to know people. We need to know people who know things, and we need to make sure that they like us so that they will help us and the young people that we work with.
I'm looking at the domain. I'm looking at physical and mental health. How can they walk into a doctor's office and say, I am in need, when they don't have those social skills? How are they going to be able to find employment if they don't
Right.
have social skills? So that one really, I think, touches on every single one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an important kind of pause for people to take and think about how intentional are we um, in in our work with young people around developing social relationships and community connections. How often do we take a step back and say, okay, so you're going to get the opportunity to meet some people. Here's some things that you can do to make sure that they remember you next time, so that when you come in here asking about a job, they're going to remember you. And we have seen great examples of this with young people that we have worked with through our work with FSM in our campus support programs and our Michigan Youth Opportunities Initiative. There's often a lot of talk on how to network with professionals, but I think about even just networking with supportive adults, connecting with peers, building those skills that are building blocks for all sorts of other relationships. So I'm curious if you have any recommendations for how supportive adults can support young people to overcome some of the challenges in this social relationships and community connections domain, and really maybe build some skills in that domain.
Well, that's again where that's where those supportive adults come in, and those supportive partners, if you will, come in. Because when they are interacting with them, when they're spending time teaching them how to drive, teaching them how to cook, teaching them how to clean, taking them fishing, going shopping with them, whatever they're doing, they're helping them learn those important social skills. They're helping them learn how to create relationships with them. Every moment they're spending volunteering their time to do so, you know, foster care is a lot like gardening. I've been a gardener for years. The first year, the seed sleeps. The second year, the seed creeps. The third year, the seed leaps. The plant leaps. Well, that's how it is with children in foster care. You may not see your efforts right away, and sometimes you may never see those efforts, but it will grow and blossom into something better, something positive. So when these supportive adults are spending time with them doing whatever I just mentioned there, they may not see their efforts in results, but there will be results. When we're spending time with these youth, just interacting with them, listening to them, talking to them, teaching them, we're helping them develop those important social relationships and connecting them to community that they desperately need.
Yeah, I kind of love the reminder that every moment creates a relationship, and I think for supportive adults, really being intentional about those moments, and being mindful that relationships can often be broken in a moment as well, and that our young people have had, too many relationships broken in a
Right.
moment or several moments, and so the opportunity to build that up is very real, but just being mindful that we don't have a lot of do-overs with our young people, so making the most out of it. And I think to me, the fit of supportive adults in the social relationships and community connections domain, like you pointed out, it's such a great fit, and I think such a great way for all of us to think about opportunities to invite more supportive relationships into our work with young people.
I wrote in my book, Faith in Foster Care, how every single one of us is a role model. Professional basketball player Charles Barkley years ago said he was not a role model, and I couldn't think could be any more wrong. Every one of us is a role model in some way. When we're spending time with foster youth, when I'm at the grocery store, at the checkout line, and the way I interact with that clerk there, when I'm at a restaurant, the way I interact with the waiter or the waitress, when I'm at the gas station, the way I interact with the person taking my money, I am a role model of how to behave in society in good times and in bad times. And our youth in foster care are watching everything that we do and listening to everything that we say. And that's an important responsibility to
Yeah.
embrace.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility. Um, so our next question is really about kind of strategic partnerships, and I'm curious. I mean, you and your wife are just phenomenal foster parents and advocates for the young people that you've cared for over the years. So this is maybe calling on some of your personal, but also probably professional experience. But I'm wondering if you could tell us about a strategic partnership that you have developed to address, a challenge in a life domain that where you have developed a partnership with a supportive adult um, to address a challenge and kind of what that might look like and how others might do that.
Well, I really believe in the power of community. I really plug in the members of the community that I know um, that will help these children. I am not afraid to ask for help. So I will go up to somebody and say, hey, my child in my home right now needs this or needs that. Can you help this? So I'm always looking for ways to develop partnerships. In fact, I was just on the phone today with somebody. I'm off to Greece to speak at an international foster care conference, and I was speaking to somebody about working with them in the future in that regard. How do we develop these relationships, these partnerships to help the youth? I'm always looking for that. Professionally, my wife has a nonprofit called A Happy Childhood, where she takes youth from foster care to 5 days to Disney World. And while they're there, she truly believes that these youth leave behind all their anxieties, all their abuse, all their traumas, and even the label of being a foster child, and immerse themselves in an atmosphere where they can learn how to smile, learn how to laugh, and learn how to play. You know, there's such thing as play therapy. We call this Disney therapy. And while we're there, we are partnering. We partner with Disney, and we partner with our local foster care agencies to do this. And this really builds a lot of skills for these children. We look at the menu and talk about nutrition and maybe the career opportunities as a chef. We look at the costumes, talk about career opportunities there. We give them a certain amount of money, and we talk about finances. We look at a whole bunch of different opportunities and benefits while we're there. So that's just one of the ways that we do it professionally, and another way we do it personally.
I love that. Well, and you said you're not afraid to ask for help, and I wrote always advocating, and I think
Yeah.
that that's just such a key part of building this network for young people, and that the network that you are building around the children in your home, the children in your life, is really one that then translates. It gets shared with those young people, and then, like you've talked about earlier, goes with those young people. So the partnerships that you may advocate for, early on, then become relationships, partnerships that they have access to, ongoing. And I love the what it sounds like your wife's nonprofit, A Happy Childhood, and really, taking a fun experience, an experience that we sort of put as, kind of the ultimate American experience, and using that as an opportunity to build relationships and really to build skills, and that you have it sounds like partners on both kind of the business side, the philanthropy side, but also, sort of the child welfare side, and really bringing together different kind of we would call them partner types, to really make a really unique and sort of I think holistic experience for young people is great. So I love those examples.
Thank you.
I'd love to go to Disneyland with you. um, so our last question that we have for you is really around the identity domain, and this is a domain where we often find in this work that the identity domain is one that is challenging to address, and that it's one that we as professionals may not have space to really address formally, or there may be some uncomfortability of, is this really within my role to address this? How do I address this? And so, we see when we talk with folks about the identity domain, there's often kind of a hedging of, ooh, that's kind of hard to get into. And we really see this as, one of those domains that supportive adults can really, have a great level of influence in identity. And when we talk about identity, we talk about cultural identity and personal identity, and that encompasses, a whole variety of things. It also encompasses the intersectionality of all of those things. And it's really, with the kind of basic understanding that every young person is going to identify in a different way, and that for young people with experience in foster care and the experience of foster care is actually an identity status that they carry. So I'm curious, from your perspective, as an expert and as a supportive adult, what are some ways that supportive adults can help to address, to support the development for young people in this domain?
Well, I want to step back a bit and say what you said I agree with 100%. So much of society believes that when a youth enters into a foster care setting that they feel safe, secure, happy. That's many times the opposite reaction. These youth do not want to be foster care. They don't want to have that label of being in foster care or a foster youth. There is a negative stigma attached to it that so many in society believe. And so it is a horrible, horrible label. In our home, well, of course, there's no label in our home. There's no label for biological, adoptive, foster, or even homeless youth in our home. They're all our children. And as a result, they all get the same opportunities, or we try to give them the same opportunities as much as we can. We've had kids in our home who have been on wrestling, debate team, the church choir, who have had jobs, marching band, who've gone to summer camps, all those skills. They need those things to feel normal. They want to feel normal. They want to feel like they are just as normal as everybody else. So we don't refer to them as our foster child. We just refer to them as a child or somebody who is currently living with us at the moment. Sometimes if people press me, I will just say, well, we are blessed to have this person staying with us at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Or, it's part of our family. It's part of our family. So the youth need to feel that they are part of the family and have every opportunity that everybody else in school has. And when they have those opportunities, they can start having that sense of self-worth and then look forward to the future. Every child that comes into my house, I encourage every single positive thing they do in the home. And if they are of age, I always prodding them about their future goals. What can we do? What do you want to do? And how can we help you get there?
I love that. So, I think hearing you, one, I think, wow, it must be wonderful to be a child living in your home. And I'm sure that there's probably, never a dull moment. But I love the kind of providing an array of opportunities to explore who they are, explore and maybe learn new skills or learn new talents or figure out, hey, I'm really not a musician. I really don't like that, but I am a dancer, and so I think that, again, that speaks to sort of the breadth of space that there is for supportive adults to fill. If you, again, are somebody that, has a particular kind of talent or skill, how can you share that with young people so they have the opportunity to try it out and just see if that's them. And I really appreciate that you take out the labels of foster or biological or adoptive, and that everybody can just be part of the family, be a kid, be in the family. And a lot of times we just talk about our students as students, and sometimes I'll realize I'm talking to a group of folks who may not necessarily know what I do, and so then I'll say, oh, students who experience foster care, to be clear. But we really want people to see our young people as students first, and see them in that role of a student, a scholar, somebody who's aspiring toward their educational goals. And the last thing that you said about the positive encouragement and kind of looking forward to the future, I think often young people, and this is, as a social worker, I will just take this on and say our child welfare system, can sometimes be too backward focused. Let's talk about what happened to you. Let's talk about how you felt about it then, rather than let's look forward. Let's talk about, what gifts you have to offer the world, where you want to be in the future, who you want to be, what you want to do, and then encouraging, every kind of positive movement, knowing that for many of our young people, they often haven't had anybody even recognize kind of their unique abilities, especially, those that are positive, and have a great opportunity to take them places in the world. So I really appreciate kind of what you said, and I think for many of our folks out there, and our if you're thinking about how to engage supportive adults, thinking about how you can bring people in who can really kind of expand the horizon of understanding of who you are for our young adults. So I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your experience, Dr. John. These hours kind of go by so quickly, and I think, like I said, I think we could probably, talk about lots of things, and go
Yes.
on, and hopefully there'll be other opportunities for folks to learn from you. In the meantime, I would love to hear a little bit about the 3 books that we have featured here. I know we purchased several of the Helping Foster Children in School book last year, and were able to give them to some of our partners, and they loved it. They thought it was an excellent book. And so I would love to hear these 3 books, and a little bit from you about what folks will find in them.
Oh, thanks for asking. Well, each book is very, very different. You couldn't pick three more diverse books. The first one, the left-hand side, Faith in Foster Care. As I've traveled across the nation and actually across the globe, I've heard from so many foster parents that they do it because they feel called to do so. This book is really 2 parts. It's for the foster parent to learn how to find faith-based resources and support, not only for the children in their home, but also for their birth parents, for their marriage, because being a foster parent can be very stressful in a marriage, for their family members, and for themselves, particularly in times of grief and loss. It's also for the faith-based organizations and institutions across the world, as well as individuals. Because as I mentioned earlier, not everybody can be a foster parent, but everybody can help. This book's message is saying, hey, it's great to go to Honduras, which my children are going to this summer, or Mexico, like I spent 4 summers there. But there's a mission field here in Michigan, here in Kalamazoo, here in the neighborhoods, and maybe sometimes even in their own extended family members. The mission field is here. Almost 500,000 kids in foster care, and not enough people who are willing or who want to help or who know how to help. So this book talks about lots of different strategies on how to help children in foster care or even foster parents without being a foster parent. So it's a great book for those people who are saying, hey, you know what, I can't have the kids in my house. How can I help anyways? The second book, right. The second book I touched a little bit earlier on, Helping Foster Children in School. This brings together, this looks at all the reasons why youth in foster care are failing in school and how the school is designed, is basically set up for failure for youth in foster care, and how school is the last place these youth want to be. It's a continuous reminder that they are a labeled foster child. So it talks about how teachers can help, how social workers can help, and how foster parents can help youth succeed. And I love the book. As a teacher myself, I felt this book is so necessary because I saw my fellow teachers having no clue whatsoever because of course they're not trained.
Absolutely.
And finally, Love and Mayhem is a sequel to my very, very first book called Fostering Love, One Foster Parent's Journey. Love and Mayhem is a no-holds-barred account, if you will, of what it is like to be a foster parent. I wanted to present a book to general society to pick up and read about foster care. I don't sugarcoat it. I say this is the hardest thing I have done. At the same time, it's the most rewarding thing I've done. This is what a foster parent's life is like. This is what the children in foster care go through and struggle, and they're normal children who just need someone to say, I care and I love you. It's it's full of lots of laughter and lots of tears, and it's an inspirational, motivating book, if you will.
I love it. I think I don't know if it was a recent blog post that you did, but I just recently saw, I might have been on LinkedIn or somewhere that I follow you, and there was a post that you wrote around grief for foster parents. And it struck me as one that I actually thought, gosh, I think we need to share this with our professionals too, because I think that there's so much that because of the rules of the child welfare system and education systems, we can't talk about with other people in our life. And sometimes we just need to know that other people feel that same way, have had that same heartbreak, and also have had that same joy. And so, I love your writing, and I think it's incredibly relatable. I am always in awe of how quickly you push out books. I'm like, man, with all that you do and all the children in your home, I don't know when you find the time to write, but
No, I've been able to. Uh, I'm on the 32-hour day. I learned that I can get 8 extra hours in every single day than most people, so that's how I get it all done. You
well, I think that's pretty spectacular, and what you have to share with us, is always just so wonderful. So I encourage everybody out there, please check out these books. We have the website here. We'll have the website, of course, available with the webinar, and we'll continue, to spread the word about all the amazing resources that you have available, Dr. John, and just want to say thank you again so much for joining us. Just a wealth of information and your insight, particularly around the unique role of supportive adults and the holistic support that they can offer for students with experience in foster care is just, it's wonderful. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're very, very kind. You honor me, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. And just before we close out for our Michigan-based audience, we just want to remind you, of course, May is Foster Care Awareness Month. The Center for Fostering Success will be hosting a mixer on the mall in Kalamazoo at Principal Food and Drink next Friday, May 19th. We're going to be celebrating Foster Care Awareness Month, providing lots of opportunities to meet folks in the community. It will be held from 4 to 7, so come on by after work, come see us, and we will have a fun swag item in prep for our foster care walk, which is the next day on May 20th from 9 to 2 or 9 to 12. And that, so Saturday, May 20th is our foster care awareness walk. This is hosted by the CETA Scholars Program. It's a great fundraiser opportunity to get engaged, meet some CETA Scholars, also help raise awareness, help raise some funds so that they can continue their activities and the many resources that they're able to receive through the CETA Scholars Program. Of course, we have lots of webinars like this one, podcasts all available on our Fostering Success Michigan website. And definitely continue to follow us at fosteringsuccessmichigan.com and on our social media. You can find us on Twitter at FS Michigan, and you can find us on Facebook, Fostering Success Michigan. Thank you to everybody that joined us today, and have a great night.